I've got a few quotes from the book pulled up,
Please.
so I'm going to quote you here, and it is: "The truth is that physicists themselves don't agree on what, at rock bottom, quantum mechanics actually says. The top quantum physicists in the world don't agree on what is going on to produce the results they predict and observe so successfully." And I think a good naive understanding of what science is the attempt to understand the physical world. But how do you see the purpose of science if our best physicists disagree about what quantum mechanics is? What's going on in a physics department or within physicists' heads that they don't care about the interpretations or what a theory really says about reality over and above its predictive abilities?
Well, it is a wonderful question, of course. And again, just for the folks who don't know, I wrote a whole book about the foundations of quantum mechanics and what it's supposed to mean. But that was a previous book, Something Deeply Hidden. And my self-proclaimed purpose in the Biggest Ideas books is to not talk about anything controversial. I will allude to controversy and speculation and whatever, but I really want to stick with the ideas that we all agree on. So like you say, the foundations of quantum mechanics are not a set of ideas that we all agree on. Now, to me, that is just incredibly embarrassing, both that we don't agree and that we don't even try to agree, that it's not considered a high priority thing within physics to try to understand what quantum mechanics is really saying. And if you're not a physicist, you might say, well, how in the world can they get away with that? And the answer is we have this sort of cookbook of rules that says, in this situation you do that, in that situation you do that. And they apply pretty well to the situations that we're very familiar with, setting up an experiment in a laboratory, making some particles collide, watching what comes out. We can predict the outcomes of those experiments using the rules of quantum mechanics, even though they're sort of ad hoc and thrown together, to enormously good accuracy. It's an amazingly effective theory, even though we don't agree about what is really going on. So that's kind of amazing. I mean, it's amazing you can do that well without having a very deep understanding. The problem is, of course, when you want to go beyond the simple setups that you understand, when you want to ask about the origin of the universe, for example. The rules are not clear, and the different choices that you might make turn out to be super duper important. Now, I think that I don't know this very well. I don't have a historically informed sense of the question about why the physics community as a whole allowed this situation to go on as long as it did without understanding quantum mechanics. There's famously these debates in the late 1920s, early 1930s between people like Einstein and Schrödinger on one side, people like Bohr and Heisenberg on the other, about whether or not we understood quantum mechanics and what it really meant and so forth. And as a matter of historical fact, Bohr and Heisenberg resoundingly won that debate. I'm happy to be on the side of Einstein and Schrödinger. I think that's actually not too bad, but they lost the public relations battle by a lot. And I suspect there's a couple things that are going on. One is that there were other things to do besides think deeply about the foundations of quantum mechanics, right? I mean, 20s and 30s into the 40s and 50s, not only were there wars being fought, but incredibly difficult questions were being asked about quantum field theory and particle physics and physics more generally. So there were like things you could put your fingers on and then do experiments about them. And physicists always like that kind of thing. And the other is it was just unclear how to make progress. If people had different ideas for different theories that would underlie quantum mechanics, how do you test them? How do you know which one is right? And so that's a weird spiral. Maybe we don't know how to test them because we haven't tried to think about it that much, but we haven't tried to think about it that much because we don't know how to test it. And, let's give it an analogy. General relativity, Einstein's famous theory of gravity, was largely ignored in the middle of the 20th century. Even though everyone thought it was right, they didn't know what to do with it. There was no observation or experiment that they could do that really helped you understand it. So it wasn't taught in graduate schools. It was there. We knew that it was a good theory, but no one really specialized in it or anything like that. Physicists are relentlessly practical people. Tell me what you can do, and they will follow up on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking about avoiding controversy, I was surprised that there was not more about the Everettian theory of quantum mechanics in the book, which we talked about at length in our episode with David Albert, or even quantum gravity, though string theory gets an honorable mention when you're talking about the origins of string theory and modeling the strong force through strings. But is this where you see sort of the role of philosophers in physics now, is trying to get past our capacity to merely use quantum mechanics, but to disentangle these conceptual questions in the way of our understanding?
I think both physicists and philosophers have a huge role to play here. I mean, philosophers have certainly kept alive these set of questions, and they've helped us understand why some of the proposed solutions just are not going to work. I think that philosophers are better at telling physicists where they're not making sense than they are at proposing better theories. So I suspect, I'm happy to get good ideas from anywhere, but I suspect the better theories are ultimately going to come from physicists because that's what they're really trained to do. And the philosophers can help them understand why this is just not up to the task when they don't quite do the right job.